Okay, so welcome to part two of our lecture on Orientalism, where we're just looking at Orientalist art. In other words, Orientalist painting. Excuse me. So, we're looking at a pre-modern art form, not mass-produced, each painting drawn by hand, yet at the same time painted for a modern market. In other words, not only are these paintings hugely in demand, but they're a product of their modern time, at a time when Europe was ascendant and curious about the cultures that they are conquering. To understand Orientalist painting, we have to juxtapose it against paintings that were more or less realistic depictions of how women looked like during this period of the 1800s. So if we look at kind of images of women in the Ottoman Empire, what can we say? That women were fully veiled when going out in public. This is a view of Istanbul. Even paintings like this, you see that the women are fully veiled. Drawings like this. A woman at a graveyard. Now, what's interesting here, the woman on the left is a Coptic woman. In other words, she's Christian. Okay? And so you have to understand, in the Ottoman Empire, even veiling was not necessarily done just by Muslims, but even Christians wore the veil in public as well. Then we have those pieces of art, usually by Europeans in the Ottoman Empire. Now, this exam could be on the midterm. It's by a French painter, Eugene Delacroix. And of course, if you look underneath the text of this slide, you'll see a long description of this painting. Delacroix's painting is significant in that it set off the trend of Orientalist depiction of women. Appropriately named The Women of Algiers. It's 1834. The painting is just 2 years after the French have invaded Algiers. And it has a home in the Louvre in Paris, the most prestigious art museum in France, if not the world. And really, Delacroix sets almost a formula that's going to evolve, but a formula of what is being depicted in terms of Middle Eastern women. That, keep in mind, are usually secluded in the harem. Now, the harem means two different things, okay? One is the massive sprawling quarter of any palace that includes the king's or the sultan's wives and concubines. But it also just means, in its most simplistic sense, the part of the home that foreign or strange men are not allowed into. When Delacroix paints this, it causes a storm because, in this sense, this is like the pornography of its time. It's allowing access for particularly the male gaze into a world that would normally be forbidden to the French man, or the foreign man for that matter, or even any Arab man who's not part of this household. So go ahead and read the description of the background of this painting. But what is formulaic is that now we see women who are unveiled. Usually you'll see some kind of domestic servant always in this scene. Okay, this is what Delacroix is setting up. And what caused such a controversy for the time it was painted is usually, we're going to see from this point onwards in Orientalist painting, some kind of smoking contraption. In this case, the assumption was that these women are consuming opium. It could be regular tobacco, but in French society, it was assumed to be opium, and kind of a painting of drug use was scandalous. But then at the same time, this was the erotic and the exotic, because what has French society or the wealthy patrons who could buy this painting allowed to? They're allowed into that forbidden realm of a Middle Eastern home, the forbidden realm of a Muslim family's home. This is the first Orientalist foray into the secluded private space that allows the Western man to look into an area that he is denied normally. And this begins, not only is this painting significant, it is kind of accompanying French colonialism and imperialism. In other words, the modern process of conquering in our modern age. But it also sets off modern Orientalism. A movement, again, the art is one painting, okay, but represents a fascination among the French masses and later the British masses to enter forbidden places. The Orientalist trend sometimes projected into the past. Usually, so what do we see in these kind of formulas? This is supposed to be what we assume ancient Babylon. Again, usually what do you see in the formula? Some kind of domestic servant. In this case, we have the male voyeur, or in other words, the Oriental male despot. I mean, technically, any man is a voyeur when he looks at a painting like this. And now the paintings are getting a bit more risque. The women are naked, and you have the Oriental carpet, and then usually some kind of wild animal. And I'm just breaking down the elements that would make up the formulaic elements of Orientalist art. Then we get to the career of the French painter Ingres. Okay? Now, in this case, this is a painting of a place that hasn't been conquered. This is the Ottoman harem. Okay? And odalisque refers to a concubine who lives in the harem. But do we see some elements that also set up the formulaic of Orientalist art? There we see the smoking contraption, assumed to be to consume the opium. Okay? The naked woman looking at you, knowing that you're a stranger, but bringing you in. This is what I'm saying. It's a pre-modern version of a form of pornography. Then what other elements do we have of Ingres that by setting kind of the formula of Orientalist art? There's a domestic servant, another servant playing, the naked woman, and the consumption of opium. Now, of course, was Ingres allowed into the realm of the Ottomans' harem? Of course not. This is all a work of imagination. And this is the point. In other words, the assumption is that Ingres got special access to these places. The purchaser doesn't question, did he really get access to this place? The models, for the most part, are absolutely going to be French models, okay? But nonetheless, when you buy a painting like this, there's a kind of a suspension of disbelief that you're actually allowed access into the private quarters of a sultan, okay? Then he gets a little bit out of control because what's a harem? Okay, that's fine. You have a few women there, but to be allowed into an Ottoman bath, that's something entirely different. We see kind of common elements, usually the musician playing African servants. Okay. Then we get to Gérôme's slave market, which I referred to earlier. Let me just get a drink. Now, I'm placing this image here just to kind of situate this painting in a kind of temporal sense. To now you can see it in its greater context. First, the geopolitical context. Remember, France has now been in Algiers, or what is Algeria, for about 40 years now. Sorry, 30 years. There's a reason I went into history. But not only do you have the kind of the elements of Orientalism that would be the erotic, but also kind of the notion that the modern Republic of France is putting an end to these pre-modern and barbaric practices that once used to be conducted in Algiers, its slave market. At the same time, even though you have kind of the civilizing mission behind the French presence in Algiers, you still have a painter out there who wants to buy this. Otherwise, Jean-Léon Gérôme wouldn't be painting this. In other words, there's a demand in the modern art market for paintings like this. In this sense, what makes Orientalist painting modern is not the means of production where they're hand painted, but these are being purchased by a newly emergent element in French society, the nouveau riche, or the rich who are not rich from being nobility, but being from the being in commerce, in trade, and also want fine art to kind of announce that they've made it in the world. Their ability to purchase art is a way of kind of communicating their newly achieved social status. And definitely this is a mass market because look at the paintings that he produces. In other words, there's a demand for this art style from Gérôme. So in other words, when you see it in red, this could be an exam image, as I said. A pool and a harem. Now look at the formulaic elements. Naked women, African servants, okay? And the smoking contraptions with, of course, an Oriental rug. Again, is this French guy getting access to a pool and a harem? No, no man can. The only men who could get access to these places are eunuchs. And as far as we know, Jean-Léon Gérôme did not get castrated to take this painting. The same goes with this. This is a scene from the past. In other words, this is all the Orientalist imaginary. Okay. And again, same author, same painter, but the same motifs, smoking contraption. And of course, you know, it doesn't take much of an imagination to think there might be some kind of phallic association with these kind of smoking contraptions. Naked women lounging around in a pool. Are these industrious women? Are they hardworking women? No. So what do women like these then symbolize? Well, kind of an indolent, lazy, non-industrious Middle East, okay? And of course, what is France? It's the antithesis of that. And there you get the kind of the French argument. We're bringing civilization to these kind of places where people just lounge and do nothing all day. And of course, it's just a form of soft porn at the same time. Again, the same theme. And now look how many years have passed. I mean, this is a much older Jean-Léon Gérôme, but still churning out these semi-naked women. What's only one thing missing? No smoking contraption. Okay. And then just simply, he didn't get too creative with the titles. Moorish Bath 1, Moorish Bath, more or less the same themes. But also just notice the dichotomy between the African servant and the usually the white model. Moorish Bath number 2. So like I'm saying, he's not now getting very creative with the titles. And then later comes up with another painting on the theme of the slave market. So what does this indicate? That these kind of paintings are still in demand. And if we just kind of juxtapose the various images in his career, with this juxtaposition, you're now being able to kind of see what are the similarities, almost kind of formulaic similarities. Other painters, again, the fascination with the belly dance, Oriental dancers. So there we have the Oriental despot, lounging. Paul-Louis Bouchard probably would have not gotten access to a harem like this. He doesn't need to. This is a work of his imagination. He probably went to Spain because this background he provides is the Alhambra Palace, which at that time was open for mass tourism. He probably went to the Alhambra, painted that, and just added the harem in there for, well, for its market value. If we look at Ernest Normand, what do we see here? Oh, I didn't know I can make my face bigger. Now I just awkwardly, I just awkwardly put myself much bigger and like I'm some kind of pervert. Oh, look at me on top of this naked woman. Hold on, like, how embarrassing. I'm laughing now. How do I make myself smaller? Oh, who the hell's calling me now? Probably a robocaller, but just in case, it could be my mom. Sorry, guys. Just give me a second. Yeah, it's a robocaller. Go to, wait, no voice. Go to hell if you can hear me in the background. You're the worst scum on the earth. I hope you get, never mind. I'm not going to say it. Anyhow. I'm still bigger. There we go. That's much better. Okay, so let me just put myself right by the smoking contraption. So again, what are the formulaic elements we see here? The Orientalist rug, the Oriental rug, the smoking contraption, and of course your naked lounging woman doing nothing all day. This is now would be a Spanish Orientalist painting, but you can see then even across cultures, most likely painting for the Spanish market, with the similar elements. Here we have the woman with her smoking / phallic symbol, naked woman, Oriental carpet, a place where you wash yourself. Now, the American market is much more prudish. So Frederick Goodall is still giving us the harem, but of course now, God forbid, how scandalous, the baby is naked, but at least the woman isn't. What formulaic elements do we see in this painting? There we have the smoking contraption. So even across the Atlantic, you have similarities. The African servant, the lounging woman, and of course, what does every household need but wild fauna and animals? Wild gazelle, and I assume this is some kind of owl, I guess. And even here you have the Oriental rug. So even in the US, there was a demand for this. Even though the US hadn't conquered any place in the Middle East, not just yet. What began as a trend of kind of Anglo-French fascination with their imperial domains is now going to travel across the Atlantic, have a demand in the US. But notice the paintings are a bit different in nature. They're much more tame. Frederick Arthur Bridgman is another. And while they're giving us Orientalist light, these are scenes that are most likely in, well, no, most likely, they're in Spain. They're in the Spanish towns that once used to be ruled by Muslims. And you see what was happening in the US at this time. There was a fascination with the Moorish past in Spain. And that was just the work of, what was the connection? It was just the work of a single man. God, no, I don't know his name. How could I forget his name? It's the guy, America's first novelist. He gave us the story of the Headless Horseman. And he was an American ambassador posted in Spain. And when he visited the Alhambra, Washington Irving, that was it. He visited the Alhambra Palace when it was just this kind of derelict ruin. And by raising attention to the Alhambra, it was slowly renovated. But he set a set of tales there called Tales of the Alhambra, kind of his version of 1001 Arabian Nights. And that's what increased the American fascination with Spain's Islamic past. So again, this is in the American genre, but I want you to notice some kind of continuum with American Orientalist art. So what do we have here? The wild animal, the lounging woman, this time clothes because Americans are prudes. Here with the smoking contraption. So this, very much the formulaic elements of Orientalist painting, with the exception that she's clothed, right? But I want you to compare this American Orientalist painting with the following, because for America, its Orient were the lands to the west, the Native American lands and Native American culture. So that it's not an accident you would see similarities between the two paintings. I mean, if you look again, it's almost formulaic. Here you have the contraptions, the smoking contraptions. Here we assume the Native American is to consume tobacco. The lounging Arab woman, the lounging Native American woman. Now, do you see kind of what's going on here in terms of similarities? Here is the Native American culture, pre-modern, lazy, indolent. Okay, and you have to realize with all the Orientalist art, what are they trying to show? The Middle East as a pre-modern place. This is hugely important to understand. And what is Europe, whether it's France, Britain, or the America, bringing these pre-modern cultures? The white man's burden. That is, we're bringing them civilization. We're bringing them modernity. And of course, what was the symbol of modernity for America was bringing the railroad into Native American lands. In other words, we're not taking over Native American lands, we're doing them a favor. We're bringing them modern transportation and communication. So that's the kind of American version of Orientalism, where the Native American was Orientalized. The American version of the Bedouin was the roaming Native American. And the Bedouin was also a fascinating figure for European audiences. I don't include them in this lecture because, of course, they're men. They're not relevant to this particular class. And if we can see in the American tradition, this kind of the erotic and the exotic of the Native American hasn't really gone away. Again, more traditions in the Orientalist genre. I don't know what that device is. Maybe, anyway, let's just forget about that one. And then the other famous American Orientalist painter, John Singer Sargent. Was he allowed into a Middle Eastern home? Seeing this woman, what is this woman doing? She's getting, the incense is burning, and she's taking these scents into her outfit. This would be in a case of Berber woman. The light of the harem, kind of similar themes here. The perfume makers, an Orientalist painting, but with a bit of the different themes. Then let's go back to France and just look at kind of a later stage. We could say very late Orientalism. So if we look at this French painter, this is what is a European woman, right? But then look at his painting of the Empress Theodora, okay, where you have some Orientalist elements. Right now we're getting into the 1900s. But now look at his version of the harem woman in the 1900s, still naked, but instead of the smoking contraption, the nargila, the hookah, what is she holding in her hand? The modern version, the mass-produced version, the cigarette. Still Orientalism, but Orientalism evolving. Let's just conclude with some rated G paintings. Okay. A much later tradition of Orientalist art here. And also let's not forget now, what was the whole argument of Orientalism? It was about the projection of power. In Europe, they used to produce these kind of images of the geopolitical situation of a particular year. And if you look at the various European powers, there's a newly unified Prussia, later it would be known as Deutschland, we would call that as German, and newly unified Italy. Look how they're being depicted. Prussia, or Germany, is man-spreading, by the way, pushing up against France. Russia, this monster that wants to take over, that is a German view. Okay, look how the Ottoman Empire is depicted as this lounging woman with what? The nargila, the tobacco or smoking contraption in her mouth. So there's kind of the geopolitical out of all this, out of what is Orientalism. And let's not forget, I think a lot of us would like to fly away. Orientalism would spread beyond France and Britain and the US. This is an example of Russian Orientalism. What's the inspiration for the flying carpet in Aladdin, for example? Well, of course, Russia was creating its own empire now, and a lot of the territories it ruled was also Muslim. And in this particular case, it would have been after seeing Muslims on their prayer rugs. That's where the flying carpet imagination came from. I also add in a little bit of Arabian Nights into it. And again, nice old-fashioned Russian Orientalism, the lovers going on the flying carpet away. This is the much later version, though here we are in the 1920s. Okay. That was just our quick survey of Orientalist art. And just remember, out of this entire lecture, you're just responsible for knowing 2 paintings.